NXT, the black and gold brand with all the indie schmucks running around doing super kicks, Canadian destroyers, and seemingly killing each other in every match. But in all seriousness, I love NXT and the matches they put on are great. However, it wasn't always the work rate based program we know it as today. NXT has churned out some of the best talents in WWE and made up a majority of today's roster. In 2012, WWE decided to change NXT from a game show to an actual wrestling-based developmental brand. They went away from having talented wrestlers carrying kegs in races to them being able to showcase their actual wrestling and mic abilities in the ring. What a concept, right? With the reset came the introduction of their very own world title, the NXT Championship. The NXT Championship is the world title of the NXT brand. It's the most prestigious championship in the so-called developmental brand. Its legacy is very strong. In fact, there have been very few lulls when you think of NXT champions. That being said, success in NXT doesn't always translate into the land of the giants over on RAW and Smackdown. Many of the stars you'd see win the NXT Championship aren't your average WWE champion. Some of them you may call indie midgets or what have you, but the talent all of them have is tremendous. We've seen so many NXT talents thrive in NXT and then just kinda be there once they hit the main roster. There have been 17 NXT champions since the inception of the title in 2012, so let's take a look at how every single NXT champion has fared once they have departed the black and gold brand. It's safe to say that Seth Rollins has been the most successful of the NXT graduates. In fact, Rollins was still the NXT champion while working on the main roster with the Shield. He made an immediate impact in the 2012 Survivor Series and he hasn't looked back since. He ended one of the greatest factions of all time and he's been on an absolute tear ever since doing so. He's won basically everything there is to win in WWE, and Rollins has shown this ability to evolve his character as both a heel and a babyface. He's become a household name for any wrestling fan and one of the faces of WWE.
I happen to love the number 5.
3 ain't enough, man, he needed 5. Big E was the second ever NXT champion. Big E, then known as Biggie Langston, had a gimmick where the 3 count just wasn't enough for this guy. He needed a 5 count. How well that would translate over onto the main roster, well, I don't really know. Big E was brought up as the powerhouse for Dolph Ziggler. He just had the look and the athleticism of someone destined for single success. He looked physically imposing and went on an Intercontinental Championship run early after his call-up. Then came the formation of the New Day, one of the best tag teams of all time, and all the seriousness was put away and he instead decided to shake his ass and throw pancakes into the crowd. Not gonna lie, it's worked. He looks like he's having fun out there, something a lot of these guys on this list can't necessarily say. He's a charisma machine who's for sure gonna have a successful singles run should the time ever come. He's just got everything for when that time does come though. He's won many tag team titles and honestly, albeit in the tag division, he's had a pretty good run on the main roster. It's better to be remembered as a phenomenal tag team wrestler rather than a guy with so much promise who just ended up being a flop.
All you have to do is believe!
Bo Dallas is a curious case. Not exactly the name that comes to mind when you think of NXT champions, but he was actually really deserving of the title in NXT. When he made the transition to the main roster, he became a jobber. He's had some tag team success in some random thrown together teams, but he desperately needs a new character and a revamp on what he's doing right now. Because in all honesty, Bo Dallas does have something to offer the product. He's got a willingness to play the worst of characters and has shown he can wrestle in the ring as he just does all the right things properly. Time will tell what's gonna happen with Bo Dallas. Certainly not a world champion caliber talent, but he definitely has something to offer.
I believe!
Neville took the title from Bo Dallas at a point where NXT really started to sign a lot of indie wrestlers and really build up a solid roster. Adrian Neville was a bit shorter in terms of height, but his offense was so much fun to watch. But once he made it over to the land of the giants over on Raw and Smackdown, they tried to make him work, but he just didn't for whatever reason. He only ever won the Cruiserweight title on the main roster, and while it was a really good run, he just didn't get the chance to shine in the mid-card like he should have. This led to frustration in his position in the company, which caused him to leave WWE. Since he's left for pastures new and is now in AEW, and he's doing quite well for himself as Pac.
You could ask me anything. You could have asked me about AEW.
Sami Zayn. Sami freaking Zayn. Man, look at this guy. He just looks like the lovable babyface you want to cheer for. And he was. He won the NXT title after that very underdog story was told. He was a crowd favorite on NXT, but when he hit the main roster, he just kinda got lost in the shuffle. He had some really awesome matches with the likes of Kevin Owens, John Cena, among others. Zayn didn't win a title for freaking forever until he finally won the Intercontinental Championship in 2020. They just haven't given him the opportunity to excel just yet, but I'd say the transition over has been a failure. He's definitely someone who could benefit from a return to NXT. The story they told with Daniel Bryan could easily be replicated, and the competitor is much the same. Zayn has so much to offer but hasn't gotten a chance to shine, but when he has, he's absolutely killed it.
You know what? If I was in a hot dog eating contest, I'd win, which is more than you can say about wrestling matches.
Kevin Owens made his debut on NXT and everyone was going crazy as WWE had signed one of the biggest indie wrestlers in the world. Owens won the title after rendering Sami Zayn so useless the match went to a no contest. Owens was so damn good, he was on the main roster as the NXT champion. Owens answered one of John Cena's US Open challenges and built a tremendous feud with him. He even went on to beat John Cena in his first ever match on WWE. The future looks so damn bright for Owens. Runs with the Intercontinental, United States, and Universal title have followed, but I don't think Owens has hit his peak just yet. There's so much more to tap into with Owens' everyman character. He's just a dude that everyone can get behind and is so easily likable. He can talk, he can wrestle, and if given the chance, he can carry the company. Still some untapped stuff with Owens in my opinion, but his run has been alright so far.
Let's make one thing clear. I don't watch this business. This business watches me.
Finn Balor. The first ever Universal Champion, as Michael Cole won't stop telling us. Finn Balor was drafted over to Raw during the brand split in 2016. They were quick to give him a push, putting a title on him right away. This showed us they really wanted to push Finn and they saw the talent that he had. Unfortunately, Finn injured his shoulder and had to relinquish the Universal Championship. When he returned, he just didn't get that same push and found himself in the mid-card as a guy who came out, had a cool entrance, and just smiled a lot. As NXT moved to a 2-hour weekly show, Finn Balor made a shock return back to NXT, and honestly, this is the best thing to happen in his career. He feels legit down there, he feels like a threat, and he gets the opportunities he should have gotten on the main roster. He just feels like a big time player, as he should.
Oh, Wendy!
Samoa Joe just looks like the type of dude who can tear you to shreds in minutes, and he is. Making his debut at NXT TakeOver Unstoppable, Joe was quick to win the NXT Championship, defeating Finn Balor. Joe made his debut obliterating Seth Rollins in January of 2017. Since then, it's been hit and miss on how Joe has been used. Samoa Joe is another case of so much talent but just not used properly, which becomes a theme in this video. This guy should have been a world champion by now, and it's becoming quite repetitive. They just don't reach their potential once they hit the main roster. Joe has had some solid feuds with the likes of AJ Styles and Brock Lesnar, but I don't feel like he's had his breakthrough feud just yet. Currently, Joe is over the age of 40 and you can't wrestle forever. This guy really can do it all, and there's so much untapped potential for Joe in WWE. His feud with Styles was just a sample of how good he can be, his character, mic, and in-ring ability. They're all there, just give him a chance.
Sorry, no speak English.
The biggest signing in NXT history, Shinsuke Nakamura came to North America with so much hype. He was a former IWGP Heavyweight Champion and the biggest free agent available. Now that he was signed with WWE, the possibilities were endless. You could have Nakamura against Rollins, Cena, Cesaro, Balor, Owens, and so many other guys. The second ever two-time NXT champion beat Samoa Joe both times to capture the NXT championship. When he made his debut on the main roster, we already knew what we were getting with him. A charismatic, talented superstar who could put on tremendous matches and had the ability to steal shows. Nakamura was catapulted up the card very quick, winning the 2018 Royal Rumble and going on to select AJ Styles as his opponent for WrestleMania. There we go, we were gonna get a dream match at WrestleMania. What could go wrong? Nut shot, then more nut shots, and more nut shots, and more nut shots. WWE turned one of the biggest signings in pro wrestling into a nutshot master. Since then, Nakamura hasn't had the best of runs, I'd say. His struggles with English have been a big hindrance to him on the main roster and has kept him away from World Championship potential.
It was absolutely glorious!
Bobby Roode was another veteran signing by NXT. His character was the arrogant rich guy who was just better and higher class than everyone else. And this character worked. Bobby Roode was the man to make this glorious character work. He looks the part, his mic work is phenomenal, and his ring skills are good. But since Bobby Roode left NXT, he hasn't come anywhere near the success he achieved in the Black and Gold brand. He had a United States title run early on and has been thrown into tag teams, been a heavy, and he's just kind of been hanging around. Most of the guys who have won the NXT championship have world championship caliber potential. I don't think the same thing about Roode, but he for sure should be at the top tier of the mid card at worst.
I was known as the chosen one.
In June of 2014, WWE fired Drew McIntyre. At one point, he was branded as the chosen one. He was pushed so heavily with Mr. McMahon behind him. He won the Intercontinental Championship very early on, and in a few years found himself as an absolute flop and a jobber, and he was eventually released. McIntyre returned to NXT after reinventing everything from his physique to his mic skills and his in-ring work. When McIntyre won the NXT Championship, it felt like more of a congratulations and welcome back rather than anything else. McIntyre was then called up to the main roster and given his second chance, and let's just say he hasn't disappointed one bit. McIntyre has become a staple in WWE, winning the 2020 Royal Rumble and currently reigning as the WWE Champion. I don't really need to say any more. Drew McIntyre has been used properly since his graduation from NXT. One thing you can't really say about a lot of the other guys on this list. Andrade won the NXT Championship at NXT TakeOver War Games from Drew McIntyre, and it was a great win. Andrade was signed with NXT after leaving Mexico where he competed as La Sombra. He came in as a dude who was distracted by women and couldn't really break through. That's until he found himself aligned with Zelina Vega. Now having a great talker in Vega, Andrade found himself as the NXT champion and was later called to the main roster. Andrade has really been coming into his own this year. He's featured weekly on Raw, and it definitely looks like they have plans for him in the future. Hopefully they use him properly because he's got the look and the in-ring ability.
Ready to pick a fight with me.
Tommy End. Aleister Black came in with quite a bit of hype to NXT. He just looked like the dude could easily kill you, and he was presented that way too. A hard-hitting bruiser who was intimidating and had the ability to do anything. Since he's left the Black and Gold brand, it's been alright. I'll put it to you this way, nothing bad has happened to Black. Like sometimes NXT talents get hurt so bad on the main roster, they just can't ever recover from it. Black though hasn't had that same fate, fortunately. For Black, he's been featured on WWE program a lot more lately and hasn't had any big career making wins just yet. I think he's gonna become a world champion for sure though, fingers crossed. Okay, these next guys, I'm kind of just gonna group them together because there's no point in me over analyzing everything and making this into like a 20-minute video when it can just be a 15-minute video, because there's really nothing to analyze here. None of these guys have hit the main roster just yet, so time will tell what we're gonna get with these guys.
Goldie comes home.
Now we're on to our first NXT champion who hasn't yet made their full-time debut on the main roster, Tommaso freaking Ciampa. Ciampa has stated he doesn't really want to go to Raw and Smackdown, and that doesn't really suit his family needs. But I don't know, time will tell what we get with Tommaso Ciampa.
I threw your map away, put NXT in a rocket ship, and flew it to freaking outer space!
Johnny Gargano, the heart and soul of NXT. Another guy who hasn't departed the NXT brand, and it just feels so right. The day that guy leaves NXT, it's just not gonna feel the same. He's small, so he doesn't really fit the mold of a main roster talent, but once again, time will tell.
I will go down as the greatest NXT champion that's ever lived.
Adam Cole, baby, has recently just lost the NXT championship after 403 days of reigning as the Black and Gold brand's top champion. A call up to the main roster seems imminent. Adam Cole just has the ability to put on phenomenal matches and is a guy who should be in the world title picture. Once again, we'll see how it goes.
Look, it looks like y'all have a debate to tend to, so I'm gonna leave y'all to that. Have fun.
And lastly, Keith Lee. It's time for Big Keith, the limitless one, the first ever NXT and NXT North American champion. I've talked about what I think about Keith Lee on this channel already. I really have no worry for Keith Lee if and when he leaves NXT. He just has the in-ring, mic, and overall ability to become a star, even if that means going over poor booking. If you didn't know already, you know now. Winning the NXT championship means nothing in the grand scheme of things. When you hit that main roster, it's everything you do from there. We've seen so many talents wasted and cast aside for no reason. NXT has definitely produced an elite array of talents, but not all of them have reached their full potential. Thankfully, only one of these guys has left the company, so at least they're around in some capacity. So that is it for the video, guys. Let me know who your favorite NXT champion is down below in the comments, and I will see you all in the next one.